Welcome to The Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor and also a family business advisor. In this show, we will be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family businesses, this podcast is for you. So today our guest is Chad Berg. We're pretty excited about this. Chad's from Lee Michael Jewelry, and we've talked to his two brothers and his dad. And so for our listeners who've not been listening to these podcasts, we're getting four different perspectives on this evolution of this family business. So today I'm very excited to have Chad, who's the last member of the family. So it'd be interesting to get his perspectives. So welcome, Chad.
Thanks, Tammy. I'm happy to be here with you today. And looking forward to it.
Great. Well, let's sort of start at the beginning and tell me a little bit about your earliest memories in the business and what it was like sort of growing up.
Sure, Tammy. If you wanted to see Dad growing up, you went to the store, you went to work, you went, so I grew up in the store, in the office, and I have a unique perspective because I am the youngest. Ryan is 13 years older and Scott is 10 years older. So I'm almost like somewhat of a next generation because, of the age difference between us. But growing up in the business was incredible. The business was really growing. Dad was really stretched. But today, I think we're so fortunate because of what he went through during those times.
Mm-hmm. And how long had your brothers been in the business before you actually entered the business?
Oh, at least 10 years. Each of them at least been in business over 10 years. Right?
Yeah. So what stands out with your dad's sort of leadership that maybe the others wouldn't have seen, having that big gap between you? Was there an evolution? Have you talked about this with your siblings?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Tammy, I would tell you that he was very tough, but I think that he's gotten softer through the years. I can remember him, yelling and screaming at vendors, and he had a truly reputation for being one of the toughest in the industry. And today he's much softer and he's much milder, I think he's proud of what we've been able to accomplish together.
Is that the syndrome of the youngest child gets away with a lot more? Was that sort of part of that leadership style that you maybe got away with more than your brothers?
I think that we're all very different. But yeah, I would say that I definitely had an easier childhood.
Yeah. And did you always see yourself being involved in the business because you were there, on a regular basis as a a child?
I've always loved it. I've always enjoyed it. I tell my wife how fortunate I feel like I am because every day I go to work and I love what I do. Like I really do. I have friends that I don't feel like they always enjoy going to work and they don't always enjoy doing what they do, but I love what I do. I feel like every day is a new challenge. And I really enjoy working with customers. That's probably my favorite part, is being able to sit down and help a customer find that piece of joy to mark that special occasion.
And did you work behind the counter as a child as well with your dad? I know you're in the office when you're little, but were you out running around the shops?
Tammy, from the age of probably 10 to 22, I would tell you every Christmas vacation I was, at the store, when I can remember as a kid, I would be gift wrapping packages and answering the phones and sweeping the floors and helping customers and just doing whatever was needed to be done. And so I had a really great memory of, I had a really good year. And one year, they brought me in the office and the manager gave me a $200 bonus, in cash. And I thought that was like amazing. But those are memories that just kind of stay with.
Right. Now, Ryan shared his perspective on, stepping into leadership in the family business. how did your paths, sort of inside or outside the business, differ in that entrance into leadership?
We all started from the bottom, right? I mean, uh, it was interesting because Tammy, right after college, I went to work for Neiman Marcus in Dallas, and I was in the buying program. And so, Neiman's, I was there from 2008 to 2010, and Neiman Marcus at the time was still really in their heyday. They could tell any vendor what they wanted and what the terms were, and the vendor did it. It was pretty incredible to be kind of sit in that chair and see how Neiman's operated. And then to come into my family's business was totally different because literally I went from Neiman, working at Neiman Marcus, the highest end of high end, to New Orleans. And the first month I was here, I stayed at the airport Holiday Inn and I'll never forget when my now wife, came to visit, and there was a cat convention in the hotel. So it was just it was a very big shift to go from working for Neiman's to moving to New Orleans. Living at this hotel by the airport and working every day. And I was a salesperson. And then I came into the family business, got my GIA, got my gemological degree, and then I came in as an assistant manager and slowly worked my way up. But I have a lot of mentors. And my brothers are two of my mentors because they are older. Because they're older, I'm able to bounce things off of them, and I feel really fortunate to have both of them in the business because they've been through more than I've been through. And we're all on the same team, and we run it together.
Now, you said you went to Neiman Marcus, but you've always had that passion about the family business. Was that something that your family recommended, that you go and get some experience outside the family business before coming in?
It's a requirement, and it's still a requirement for our next, because we're talking to our next generation about my brother's kids about coming to the business. And yes, we asked that everybody go work somewhere else for 2 years. And in fact, I will tell you, I loved it. I loved it in Neiman Marcus. I loved work. I was, in their executive development program. They wouldn't put me in jewelry because we competed against Neiman's at the time.
I was going to ask you if you were into jewelry.
No, so they put me in men's sportswear, but I learned a lot through it because the principles are the same. The buying principles are the same. Make sure you buy it at the right price. Make sure that you're not over inventory. Make sure that you return whatever doesn't sell. Those are principles that are great for us here, and were kind of ingrained with me at Neiman's. And the biggest lesson I learned was, I'll never forget, my first boss was Stacy Fertitta, and Stacy said to me, she said, "Chad, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to do something. What matters is that it's done right the first time." And that's one of those principles that I was just never, that I always think about today, and it's always stayed with me.
Now, when you went to work at the family business, were you able to talk to your dad and your brothers about what you'd learned at Neiman and look at, incorporating that into the family business?
Yes, but yes and no, because they were still so corporate and we're still family. The difference is what's neat about a family business is that we can make the decision, right, and change it and alter it. Whereas in a big company like that, you're more of a cog in the wheel in the cog. It's just a different situation. But there were definitely things that I learned and that have stayed with me. And I met my wife out of it. She worked for Neiman's as well. So that was an incredible.
So thank you, Dad, for pushing me to work somewhere else for 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you now work with your brothers and you're owners of the company. How did you sort of get into and define your roles? And how hard was that? Was that sort of intentional? Did it just sort of happen with as you said, you're very different. So how did that evolution of your roles get defined?
A lot of it has to do with, because I'm the youngest. Dad was giving up things, and so I got a lot of the things that he liked to do the most. Does that make sense? As far as my corporate responsibility,
right?
He loved the buying and he loved the advertising, and so I oversee buying and advertising, and I actually think that it worked out for the best for each of our strengths. Okay, because I think that Scott is extremely analytical. I think that he is great with it. He's very tough, but I think it's good because he makes you kind of think and look at things differently. I think that Ryan he's an incredible dreamer. I think that Ryan really has a great affinity for being able to build things and to think differently through processes. And I think that I'm a little bit different from both of them, where I'm somewhat analytical, but not to the same point that Scott is. And I think that it has been beneficial because I oversee the merchandise and advertising, and then I oversee 5 of our stores, and so that has allowed me, to grow and to use what my strengths I believe are, but also to work together with my brothers because they counter some of the things I don't do as well.
And that's a very difficult thing to do, is to work with siblings and have, to make sure that roles are defined. What is the hardest part that you found about working with your family?
Communication. It's all about communication, and we can't communicate enough. I mean, we have 1 to 2, Teams calls a week to kind of go through and dissect what's going on in the business. But at the end of the day, it's all about communicating. And sometimes, things don't, a text might come across to one brother perceived differently than how that brother may have intended it, right? And so, getting on the phone, really going through it, and we're all on the same team and supporting each other and working through issues, together. When we're aligned, I think we're an incredible force. Okay. And making sure that when we communicate and when we walk into a meeting, we are aligned so that we can communicate with one voice.
Now, you mentioned that it's so hard and you can't communicate enough, which is a problem with family businesses because there's the assumption, right? As you said, someone gets a text and they see it from a different perspective, or the tone seems different. Do you think that working with the family business advisor that you had, the enterprise advisor, helped develop that communication strategy?
Absolutely. And also, I think that one of the things that we're working on right now is feedback. Okay. And looking at feedback as a gift, okay, instead of it being as a gotcha, okay, because for us, we worked with advisors since I was literally 13 years old. Okay, my dad has said that he has always said his success will be judged more so on how he transitions the business than how he built it.
Okay? Yes, and I think I agree with that. That's pretty profound, actually. Good for him. I'm not sure he even said that on his podcast.
But no, that is, and even at 13, opening up the financials. I mean, our CFO, I was a 13-year-old kid, would come in and present to the family the financials of the business. And so it really got me in tune to what the business is and what the opportunities are. And it's so much bigger today than it was back then. And I'll never forget, we had one advisor saying that, in order for the 4 of you to live out of the business, you've got to grow it. You've got to grow it in a big way. And we've been really fortunate that we've been able to do that. Because I remember back, I think this was probably 10 years ago, saying, if not, I don't know how this all works. And fortunately, we were able to grow it together, my brothers and I, with Dad, as a collective team.
Well, and I think that's important because I think that people underestimate the value of bringing in a third party to help you work through that. Because I'm sure that without having somebody there to help your dad and your brothers, back when you were 13, could have had a completely different outcome from communication and alignment and moving forward.
Tammy, I would tell you it's probably the single most important thing that any family business can do, because I have friends that have family businesses, and not all of their parents or ownership groups are receptive to bringing in someone to help. But bringing in that outsider for us to provide another perspective, to be able to provide a different outlook, has been critical to our success.
Do you think that really helps define the difference between your family relationship and your business decisions or relationship?
Absolutely. I think that there has to be an interesting dissection between what is best for the family and what is best for the business. And our first advisor that we had when I was 13, I'll never forget, he always said, I'm going to represent the business. Because the family, it's critical the family stay together, right? That is the overarching. But it's always good to have someone else in the room who has got a flag in the corner saying this is what might be best for the business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you've been in the business for quite a while. You've been, since you were young. Do you think your definition of success of the family business has changed over time?
Tammy, I will tell you that we're achieving revenues that I didn't know were possible. And so, yes, I think that the growth mindset, though, I think my brothers and I are still very eager to grow this business. I think that and it's really been interesting because now we have G3. Ryan has a son who is 20, Zach is 22, and Scott has a son who is 18, who are starting to show interest in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like for me as an uncle, my kids are young, they're 10 and they're under, one is 11 and 8. So they're younger, but to start to see the next generation start to develop an interest in the business has been like really so much fun and exciting because to start to imagine and dream where does this business go in the next 20,
Mm-hmm.
30 years. I think it is pretty exciting.
Now, it was probably simpler having the three of you enter the business because you all grew up in the same house, you have the same parents. But have you started that planning around that succession to the next generation? I know they're still young, but if you started to work on the governance of, well, how do they enter the businesses the same way we did? How do we do that now? Because the numbers have multiplied, right? It's not just three. It's, I don't know how many it will end up in total, but it's certainly not three.
Jamie, we've talked about that a lot as a family. For my brothers and I, we have a very thick document that really talks through the buys and sells if one of us wanted to exit or retire or got sick or something else. And that was very intentional and very methodically laid out. We are now starting to talk about what does it look like for G3 to come in? Absolutely, because we've got it's easier while dad is in the room to be able to work through those discussions. He's ultimately said he knows that it's going to be very different than how Ryan, Scott, and I came in. But I think that it's something that we're starting to talk through. It's something that is going to take a lot of time and attention. But having our consultant to help keep us on pace and to keep us kind of moving in the right direction, it's been very helpful.
Do you include Gen 3 now in any meetings?
We do. We meet with them once a year. And we've actually, Tammy, we've put together an entire presentation of options of things that they are welcome to attend. So they can attend jewelry shows, but how many jewelry shows they can attend? They can attend once they reach a certain age, they can go to Europe to a jewelry show. We really want to expose them at an early age to the business. And the neat thing about our business is that they can see it, they can touch it, they can feel it, right? I mean, not, if you're selling wheels and cogs, it's a little bit different than you're selling beautiful jewelry. And so, there is some excitement that we can show them early on and get them interested.
Right. Well, I can't believe that we're actually running out of time. So I do have, a couple of questions.
Sure.
Really, and where do you see the business in the future? Is this something that you, from a legacy perspective, want to carry on as a family business for generations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that my hope is that my kids will have the ability and the desire to grow in the business. Our business has been an incredible gift. It's allowed me, my brothers, to see things and do things that I never knew were possible. And I hope that for generations to come, that the Berg, that our family are able to continue on the legacy. What does that look like? Does that mean that one of them is ultimately charged? I don't know. I think it'd be difficult for all three. Will three of them manage it together? I don't know. Does a CEO come in? A paid executive come in and they work in the business? What's interesting, Tammy, my brothers and I talk about, we work 6 days a week. Okay. Will the next generation want to work 6 days a week? Okay. There's a lot of questions that go through my mind. If a G3 doesn't want to work 6 days a week, they can still work in the business, but will they have a leadership role? There's a lot of things, a lot of questions that go through our mind. I hope that this business continues to excel and go on to the next generation. That's my hope.
Well, I think that based on what you're doing now, it sounds like it could. It's just a matter of if who's interested. Or, it could be that Gen 3 doesn't want to work in the business at all. And as you said, you bring in a third party and you still have ownership and watch it grow and, lead it from a board's perspective as opposed to actually day-to-day operations. But I mean, you've touched on absolutely everything that I recommend as a family business in order to maintain that legacy or to work together to make those decisions. A lot of times there's discord, so it's easier just to sell the business than to deal with those issues of, well, I don't like your son, mine should be the president. But once you start having all that governance in place and talking about it, because it's not easy. It's not easy to have those conversations, and it's not easy to make a decision. It takes time. And I love the fact that you're working on that already, even with the younger generation. You got some older ones, 22. You got to get some of the points down real fast. But I think it's amazing, and I have to congratulate you on all the work that your family has done. It's amazing.
Thank you very much.
Now, I do like to end every
Yes.
podcast with 3 pieces of advice. So, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to other families in business?
Okay, so my 3 that I would give, one is put the relationships before the business, because the family is the key. The family's got to stay together. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is create clear roles, expectations, and accountability. Okay,
I
right?
love that.
Because especially the way my brothers and I are running it, with the 3 of us being in charge, we need to know exactly what our role is. Okay, we need to know our expectations, and we have to be able to hold each other accountable. Okay,
And you're in different cities.
and we're in different cities. And then the last is the way we look at this business is not the way a publicly traded business company would, which is in quarters, right? I mean, they look at it and we're looking at this long term. I mean, we make an investment in a community, and it may take 10 to 15 years for it to be profitable, right? Okay, and we are invested in the long term, not the short term, and that is the most important thing that I think the dad has really instilled in us. It's not about short-term gains, it's about the long-term gain.
That's very unique with family businesses because, as you say, publicly traded companies need profits today, right? Where family businesses are a little more nimble. They have a long-term view. They can, change course very quickly. There's so many advantages to a family business, and I love the fact that you've touched on them all. So I gotta congratulate your family and also the advisors you've been working with the last number of years. It's amazing. So I think you could actually be a family business advisor, a family enterprise advisor, with all your knowledge and experience. It's been great.
We've been very fortunate. So
anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, Chad. It's been a really great conversation. I quite enjoyed it.
great. Thanks, Tammy.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find Blue Roots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.